15.2 Non-competitive factor market. Having examined the factor market equilibrium, where competitive firms sell a factor to a competitive output market, we now survey the effects of market power on factor equilibrium. If firms in the output market or in the factor market exercise market power by setting price above marginal cost, less of a factor is sold than would be sold if all firms were competitive. Factor demand curves vary with market power. As we saw in Chapter 11, the marginal revenue of profit maximizing firm I, capital M, capital R, equals P times open parentheses 1 plus 1 over epsilon, close parentheses, is a function of the elasticity of demand, epsilon sub I, facing the firm, and of the market price P. Thus, the firm's marginal revenue product of labor is capital M, capital R, capital P, subscript L, equals P, open parentheses, 1 plus 1 over epsilon sub I, close parentheses, multiplied by capital M, capital P, subscript L, which is the marginal product of labor. The labor demand curve is P times the marginal product of labor for a competitive firm because it faces an infinitely elastic demand at the market price. So its marginal revenue equals the market price. A monopoly operates in the elastic section of its downward sloping market demand curve, Chapter 11. So its demand elasticity is less than -1 and infinite. So -50 is less than epsilon, which is less than or equal to -1. As a result, at any given price, the monopoly's labor demand, P, open parentheses, 1 plus 1 over epsilon, close parentheses, multiplied by the marginal product of labor, lies below the labor demand curve, P times the marginal product of labor, price times the marginal product of labor of a competitive firm with an identical marginal product of labor curve. A Cournot firm faces an elasticity of demand of nu times epsilon, or is that n times epsilon, where n is the number of identical firms and epsilon is the market elasticity of demand, Chapter 13. If the market has a constant elasticity demand curve with an elasticity of epsilon, the demand elasticity faced by a duopoly Cournot firm is twice that, 2 times epsilon of a monopoly. Consequently, a Cournot duopoly firm labor demand curve, price open bracket 1 plus 1 over open parentheses 2 epsilon close parentheses close bracket multiplied by the marginal product of labor, lies above that of a monopoly but below that of a competitive firm. Figure 15.4 shows the short run market labor demand curve for an actual competitive thread mill and the corresponding curves if the firm was one of two identical Cournot quantity setting firms or a monopoly. Superscript 5, which reads, in the short run, the thread mills marginal product function is capital M, capital P, subscript L equals 1.2 capital L to the power of negative 0.4. The labor demand is P times 1.2 capital L to the power negative 0.4. For a competitive firm, price multiplied by open bracket 1 plus 1 over open parentheses 2 epsilon close parentheses close bracket multiplied by 1.2 capital L to the power of negative 0.4 for one of two identical Cournot duopoly firms, and P open parentheses 1 plus 1 over epsilon close parentheses times 1.2 capital L to the power negative 0.4 for a monopoly. In the figure, we assume that epsilon equals 2.